The heat rising off the asphalt in shimmering waves was a familiar beast. It was the kind of oppressive, late August Texas heat that baked the chrome on a Harley until it could brand you. For Ray "Wrench" Bennett, Sergeant-at-Arms of the Iron Sentinels Motorcycle Club, it was just another Tuesday. He swung his 2018 Road Glide into the gravel lot of the Hog's Breath Saloon, the club's unofficial headquarters, the engine's deep, guttural rumble settling into a contented idle before he cut it. The air smelled of sun-scorched dirt, stale beer, and the faint, comforting aroma of worn leather. But something was wrong. It was a dissonant note in a familiar song. Standing just off the edge of the property, perilously close to the road, was a child's lemonade stand, a rickety card table, a bright yellow plastic pitcher sweating in the sun, a stack of paper cups, and a boy. He couldn't have been more than 9 years old, with a mop of unruly brown hair and a look of fierce, desperate concentration on his face. He stood ramrod straight behind his little table, a soldier at his post. Wrench swung a leg over his bike, his worn leather boots crunching on the gravel. At 52, he moved with the deliberate economy of a man who had spent 2 decades in the Army Rangers, a life where wasted motion could get you killed. His face was a roadmap of long miles and longer nights, framed by a graying beard, but his eyes were sharp, missing nothing. And what they saw now made the back of his neck prickle. It wasn't just the stand, it was the sign. A piece of cardboard, hand-lettered in thick black marker. The top part was what you'd expect. Lemonade, 50 cents. But it was the line underneath that snagged the air from Wrench's lungs. In bigger, more urgent letters, it read, "Help my dad." Wrench watched for a moment. A pickup truck slowed, the driver laughing and pointing, then sped off. A car full of teenagers honked and hollered something unintelligible. No one stopped. They saw a cute kid, a funny sign, a roadside curiosity. Wrench saw an SOS flare. His training, his entire life's experience, screamed at him that this was not a joke. This was not a gimmick. This was a child standing on the edge of a cliff, screaming for a rope. He walked over, his shadow falling across the small table. The boy, Leo, didn't flinch. He just looked up, his brown eyes wide and pleading, holding an intensity that had no place on a child's face. Wrench pointed a gloved finger at the sign. "What's this about, kid?" The boy's lower lip trembled, but his voice was steady. "It's what it says. I need help for my dad." "And the lemonade?" Leo swallowed hard. "I figured people don't like to stop for nothing." Wrench's heart, a tough, scarred piece of muscle, clenched. He'd seen that look before, on the faces of civilians in war zones, on the faces of his own men when things went sideways. It was the look of someone who had run out of options. He leaned against the table, making himself smaller, less intimidating. "My name's Wrench. What's your name?" "Leo. My name is Leo Miller." "All right, Leo. Tell me what's wrong with your dad." The dam broke. Tears welled in the boy's eyes, but he fought them back, his small hands clenching into fists on the tabletop. "They took him. An hour ago. From his garage." "Who took him?" Leo's voice dropped to a whisper. "Mr. Vance's men. They came in a black car. They told him he was out of time. They said if he didn't sign the papers, they were going to take him somewhere he couldn't say no. My dad told me to hide. I hid under the workbench. I saw them push him into the car and drive away." Wrench felt a cold fury begin to smolder in his gut. He kept his voice calm, methodical. "Did you call the police, Leo?" The boy's face crumpled. "Yes, I called 911. I told them what happened. The lady, she asked if they had a weapon. I said no. She asked if they hurt him. I said they just pushed him. She said it sounded like a business argument, and that I should wait for my dad to come home and have him call them if he felt a crime had been committed. She told me not to play on the emergency line. Wrench closed his eyes for a second, the injustice of it a physical blow. Of course, a child's frantic call dismissed as a prank, a civil dispute. No flashing lights, no sirens. Just a dial tone and a boy left utterly alone with a terror too big for him to carry. I tried to tell the man at the gas station down the road, Leo continued, his voice cracking. He just patted my head and told me my dad was probably just running an errand. Everyone they just smile. They don't listen. Wrench reached out and put a hand on the boy's shoulder. The small frame was trembling. I'm listening, Leo. And I believe you. The relief that washed over the boy's face was devastating. It was the look of a drowning person finally finding air. He let out a single, ragged sob he'd clearly been holding in for the last hour. Wrench straightened up, his mind already shifting from observation to action. 20 years in the Rangers had taught him how to assess, plan, and execute under pressure. This was just a different kind of battlefield. Who is this Mr. Vance? Silas Vance. He owns a big company, Vance Automotive Group. He's been trying to buy my dad's garage for months. Dad loves his shop. It was my grandpa's. He said he'd never sell. Last week, Mr. Vance came himself. He told my dad he had until today to take his final offer, or he'd take the garage one way or another. Wrench nodded. He knew the type. Corporate predators who saw small family businesses as nothing more than properties to be consumed. Okay, Leo. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to pack up your stand. You're coming with me. You're safe now. And we are going to get your dad. The boy's eyes widened, a flicker of hope igniting in their depths. Really? Wrench gave him a grim smile. Really? The Iron Sentinels don't let bullies win. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from today, because this story will remind you that the most important cries for help don't always come from the loudest voices. Sometimes they come from a lemonade stand on the side of the road. No matter where you are in the world, the lesson is the same. Always, always listen to the children. Wrench helped Leo pack the pitcher and cups into a cardboard box. He led the boy over to his gleaming Harley, the afternoon sun glinting off the chrome. Leo looked at the massive machine with awe. Wrench keyed his radio, his voice a low growl that carried across the club's private channel. "Preacher, you there?" "This is Wrench." The voice of the club president, a former pastor named John Preacher Hendricks, crackled back instantly. "Go for Wrench. I'm at the Hog's Breath. I've got a code red situation. A civilian, Mark Miller, owner of Miller's Auto on 5th, has been taken. Abducted about an hour ago by men working for Silas Vance of Vance Automotive. His 9-year-old son is with me. The kid saw the whole thing. Cops blew him off." There was a beat of silence on the other end. Then Preacher's voice came back, stripped of all its usual warmth, hard as forged steel. "Understood. What's the objective? Vance has him. We need to apply pressure. Force him to release Miller before he does something stupid. I need the chapter. How many? Everyone who can ride. Rally at the Hog's Breath. Now." The order was given. A text blast, encrypted and direct, went out to every member of the Iron Sentinels Central Texas chapter. Iron Sentinels, MC, Rally, Hog's Breath, Code Red. Wrench has the brief, ETA 15 minutes. Preacher. The effect was instantaneous. Across the county, men dropped what they were doing. A real estate agent in the middle of showing a house excused himself, his phone buzzing in his pocket. A master electrician working on a new high-rise told his foreman he had a family emergency. A grizzled high school history teacher, known as Professor, ended his lecture 30 minutes early. A mechanic called Grease wiped his hands on a rag, threw down his tools, and was out the door in seconds. They were business owners, veterans, blue-collar workers, and family men. But they were all sentinels first. Wrench helped Leo into the saloon, where the bartender, a gruff woman named Roxy who had seen it all, took one look at the boy's face and Wrench's expression, and immediately softened. "Keep him in the back office, Roxy. Get him a Coke and whatever he wants to eat. Don't let him out of your sight." She just nodded, leading Leo away with a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You're safe here, sweetie." Wrench walked back outside just as the first bike roared into the lot. It was Ghost, the club's road captain. Within a minute, 2 more bikes pulled in, then 4 more. They came in a wave of thunder and steel, a gathering storm of leather and chrome. In 12 minutes, 22 Harley-Davidsons were parked in a formidable line in front of the saloon. 22 men, patched and ready, stood looking at Wrench, waiting for orders. Preacher was the last to arrive, his bike rumbling to a stop at the head of the formation. He got off, his tall, imposing frame radiating an aura of calm authority. He walked up to Wrench. "Talk to me." Wrench laid it out, quickly and efficiently. The boy, the dad, the predatory corporation, the abduction, the police in action. When he finished, a low growl of anger rippled through the assembled men. They had sons, daughters, fathers. They understood this on a primal level. "So Vance thinks he can just snatch a man out of his own shop in broad daylight," Preacher said, his voice dangerously quiet. "He thinks no one will come for him. He's about to find out how wrong he is," Wrench replied. "If you've ever witnessed something terrible and felt the crushing weight of not being believed, if you've ever been the small voice trying to speak truth to a world that wasn't listening, pause for just a moment to like and share this story. Because what happened next would prove that one boy's courage, backed by the thunder of 22 brothers, could shake an entire city to its foundations. Now, back to the story." Wrench unrolled a local map on the hood of a dusty pickup truck. His ranger training took over, his mind seeing not a city map, but a tactical grid. "Okay, listen up. Vance Automotive Group headquarters is here, on Industrial Way. It's a glass and steel monstrosity. That's our primary target. But Vance is arrogant, not stupid. He might not have taken Miller there. Ghost, you take 4 men. Vance owns a warehouse off Route 79. I've marked it here. Go there. Don't go in. Just be seen. Let them know we're watching. Tank, you take 3 men. This is Vance's home address in the Heights. Same deal. Set up a perimeter. Visible deterrence. The rest of us, 14 bikes, we're going to the headquarters." Preacher nodded his approval. "What's the play when we get there, Sarge?" "We're not vigilantes," Wrench said, his eyes scanning the faces of his men. "We're not going in. We're going to create a problem that only the police can solve. We form a blockade, total containment. Nothing gets in, and nobody gets out. We park our bikes across every entrance and exit. We just sit there. Engines running. A 14-bike symphony. Then I make another call to 911. This time, they'll listen." The men grinned. It was brilliant. A legal, non-violent show of force so overwhelming it couldn't be ignored. It was a classic Sentinel move. Use their intimidating reputation as a tool for justice, not crime. "Let's ride," Preacher commanded. 14 engines roared to life in perfect, deafening unison. The ground vibrated. The sound was biblical, a promise of impending judgment. Wrench led the column out of the parking lot, a phalanx of steel and leather moving with military precision. They flowed onto the highway, taking over the right lane, a rolling thunder that made other cars instinctively move aside. They rode at a steady 70 miles per hour, a dark river of purpose cutting through the afternoon traffic. They reached Industrial Way in under 20 minutes. The Vance Automotive Group headquarters was exactly as Wrench had described it, an arrogant, sterile tower of tinted glass. Wrench signaled with his hand, and the formation broke apart like a well-drilled unit. 2 bikes peeled off to block the rear service entrance. 2 more blocked the entrance to the underground parking garage. Wrench and the other 9 riders pulled directly in front of the main entrance, a sweeping circular driveway. With practiced efficiency, they dismounted and angled their massive bikes to form an impenetrable barrier, their headlights aimed at the glass doors like the eyes of hungry wolves. Then, as one, they restarted their engines. The synchronized roar of 10 V-twin engines echoing off the glass facade was a physical force. It was a sound that said, "We are here, and we are not leaving." People inside the lobby froze, staring out in disbelief and fear. Security guards appeared, speaking frantically into their radios. Wrench ignored them. He pulled out his phone and dialed 911. "This is Ray Bennett," he said, his voice calm and clear, cutting through the engine noise. "I am at 1230 Industrial Way, the headquarters of Vance Automotive. I am here with 13 other concerned citizens. We have credible intelligence that a man named Mark Miller, who was abducted an hour ago, is being held against his will inside this building by Silas Vance. We believe his life is in imminent danger. We have established a peaceful, non-violent perimeter and will not allow anyone to leave the premises until law enforcement arrives to ensure Mr. Miller's safety. I am a former Army Ranger, and I am formally requesting an immediate welfare check. Send a supervisor." This time, there was no dismissal. The dispatcher's voice was suddenly alert and professional. "Sir, stay on the line. Units are being dispatched to your location." Inside, on the top floor, Silas Vance watched from his panoramic window as the bikers blockaded his building. He was a man accustomed to power, a man who bought what he wanted and crushed what he couldn't buy. He saw the bikers not as a threat, but as an annoyance, an insect to be swatted. He turned to the 2 brutish men standing over a pale, terrified Mark Miller. "Get rid of them," he snarled. One of the thugs, a mountain of muscle with a shaved head, smirked. "Sure thing, boss. We'll go have a chat." The 2 men took the elevator down to the lobby. They strode through the glass doors, chests puffed out, radiating an aura of cheap intimidation. The lead thug swaggered up to Wrench, who was standing calmly by his bike. "You and your clown posse need to move your toys. You're on private property." Wrench didn't even look at him. He just stared at the glass tower. "We're not going anywhere." The thug's face darkened. "I'm not asking." "That's good," Wrench said, his voice dropping an octave, "because we're not leaving until Mark Miller walks out that door." The thug laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "You think you're tough." He took another step forward, moving into Wrench's personal space. That was his last mistake. Before he could even blink, Wrench moved. It wasn't a punch. It was a precise, controlled application of force. One hand shot out, grabbing the man's wrist, while Wrench's other hand applied pressure to a nerve cluster in his neck. The big man's eyes widened in shock and pain, and his knees buckled. Wrench held him up, his face inches from the thug's. "I'm not tough," he whispered, the words like chips of ice. "I'm disciplined. There's a difference. And right now, 14 armed police officers are about 3 minutes away. So I suggest you and your friend go back inside and advise your boss to cooperate." He released the man, who stumbled back, gasping, cradling his wrist. The other thug, seeing his partner neutralized so effortlessly, had frozen in place. Fear had replaced his bravado. They both scrambled back inside the building. Less than 2 minutes later, the first sirens echoed in the distance, growing rapidly closer. 4 squad cars screeched to a halt behind the line of bikes. A police sergeant, a veteran cop with weary eyes, got out and approached Wrench, his hand resting near his sidearm. "What the hell is going on here, pal?" Wrench met his gaze. "I'm Ray Bennett," I called. "Mark Miller is in that building." His 9-year-old son saw him being forced into a car by Vance's men. The sergeant's eyes narrowed, taking in Wrench's Iron Sentinel's vest, the military-style patches sewn alongside it, the calm, unwavering confidence in his stance. This wasn't some hot-headed biker. This was something else. "And you decided to handle it this way?" "We decided to make sure Mr. Vance didn't have a chance to move him out the back door while you were still processing the paperwork," Wrench said evenly. "He's in there. Top floor. Go get him." The sergeant held his gaze for a long moment, then made a decision. He turned to his officers. "All right, we're going in." As the officers entered the building, Wrench keyed his radio again. "Ghost, Tank. What's your status?" Ghost's voice crackled back. "All quiet at the warehouse, Sarge. But a black sedan fitting the description Leo gave us just peeled out of here like the devil was on its tail." Tank came on a second later. "Same here. Car just tore out of the driveway. Looks like we spooked the rats from their nests." Wrench smiled grimly. "Good. They're panicked. They're making mistakes." Inside, the police found Silas Vance in his office, attempting to look composed. But the arrival of the uniforms had shattered his illusion of control. The sergeant explained they were there for a welfare check on Mark Miller. Vance scoffed. "This is ridiculous. Mr. Miller is here for a business meeting. He's free to leave at any time." "Is that so?" the sergeant said, his eyes sweeping the room. "Where is he?" Vance gestured vaguely toward a conference room. "In there, finishing up." The sergeant and 2 officers walked to the conference room and opened the door. Mark Miller was sitting at the head of a long table, looking pale and shaken. The 2 thugs stood on either side of him. On the table was a stack of legal documents and a pen. "Mr. Miller, are you here of your own free will?" the sergeant asked gently. Mark looked from the thugs to the police officers, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and profound relief. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He simply shook his head, a single, desperate motion. "That's all we need," the sergeant said. He turned to the thugs. "You 2, hands behind your back. You're under arrest for kidnapping." He then looked at Vance. "And you, Mr. Vance, you have the right to remain silent." As the police led a stunned and sputtering Silas Vance out in handcuffs, Mark Miller was escorted safely from the building. He stepped out into the blinding sunlight and stopped dead. He saw the line of motorcycles, the leather-clad men standing by them, their engines now silent. And he saw Wrench. He walked toward him, his steps unsteady. You did this?" Wrench nodded toward the saloon. "Your son did this. He's a brave kid." Mark Miller's eyes filled with tears. He put his hand on Wrench's shoulder. "I don't know how to thank you." "You can thank me by getting your shop back up and running," Wrench said, "and by taking your boy for some ice cream. If this story has touched your heart, take a moment to share it and subscribe to Bike Diaries, because what happened next would prove that brotherhood isn't just about riding together. It's about showing up when the world turns its back. Hit that hype button, and if you want to support what we do, the membership link is below. Now back to the story. The ride back to the Hog's Breath was different. It was slower, more triumphant. Mark rode in the back of a squad car, giving his official statement, but he'd promised to meet them there. When Wrench and the Sentinels pulled into the lot, Leo came running out of the saloon, his face a mask of anxious hope. "Did you find him? Is he okay?" Wrench dismounted and knelt, putting him at eye level with the boy. "We found him, Leo. He's safe. He's on his way here right now. Leo threw his arms around Wrench's neck, burying his face in the rough leather of his vest. "Thank you," he sobbed. "Thank you for believing me." Wrench held him for a moment, the small, trembling body a stark contrast to the hardened world he inhabited. "Any time, kid. Any time." When Mark's car finally arrived, the reunion was a thing of pure, unscripted emotion. Leo sprinted across the gravel lot and launched himself into his father's arms. Mark held him tight, burying his face in his son's hair, his shoulders shaking with relief. The bikers, these tough, formidable men, all looked away, giving the family their moment. They stood in a silent, respectful semicircle, a leather-clad honor guard. Mark finally looked up, his eyes finding Wrench. He walked over, with Leo holding his hand. "I owe you everything," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Vance would have ruined me, or worse. You and your men, you saved my life, and you believed my son when no one else would." Wrench just nodded. "That's what brothers do, and your boy made a pretty compelling case." That night, the story of Silas Vance's arrest was the lead item on the local news. The report mentioned an anonymous tip from a citizens group that had led to the police action. The subsequent investigation would uncover a pattern of racketeering, extortion, and intimidation that sent Vance to prison for a very long time and dismantled his corrupt empire. A few days later, Wrench rode his Harley over to Miller's auto. The garage was bustling, with cars on every lift. A new, hand-painted sign hung over the door: Miller and Son Auto Repair. Mark came out to greet him, wiping grease from his hands. "Business is booming," he said with a wide grin. "Seems like everyone wants to support the little guy who stood up to the bully." "Where's the hero?" Wrench asked. Leo came running out from under a car, holding a wrench almost as big as his arm. He beamed when he saw Wrench. Wrench reached into his vest pocket and pulled out something small and heavy. He knelt in front of Leo. "This is a challenge coin," he explained, placing the heavy, bronze-colored medallion in the boy's hand. It had the Iron Sentinel's insignia on one side and the Ranger Creed on the other. "We only give these to people who have shown exceptional courage and honor." Leo stared at the coin, his eyes wide. "For me, for you," Wrench said. "You were scared, but you did what you had to do. You didn't give up. You stood your ground and you fought for your family. That's the heart of a sentinel." He then pulled out a small, custom-made patch. It was a miniature version of the Iron Sentinel's back patch. "And this," he said, "for your jacket, so you always remember you've got family watching your back." Leo looked from the coin to the patch, then up at the big man with the kind eyes. He didn't say thank you this time. He just smiled, a real smile, bright and full of a 9-year-old's uncomplicated joy. "I'm going to be a mechanic, just like my dad. But I'm going to be a sentinel too, just like you." Wrench tousled his hair. "I don't doubt it for a second, kid." Thank you for watching this story about Leo, his dad Mark, and the Iron Sentinels. It's a powerful reminder that heroism isn't about the size of the person, but the size of their courage. It's about paying attention to the world around you and having the guts to act when you see something wrong. Please subscribe to Bike Diaries, hit that hype button, and consider becoming a member with the link below. Share this story with everyone who needs to remember that one small voice, if heard by the right person, can become a roar. Tell us in the comments, have you ever been in a situation where you knew something was wrong, but no one would listen? What did you do? We want to hear your stories of courage, big and small. 1 year later. The sun was setting over Miller and Son Auto Repair, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The garage was closed for the day, but the lot was full, not with customer cars, but with nearly 30 gleaming Harley-Davidsons. A massive barbecue grill was smoking away, and the sound of laughter mixed with classic rock music. It was the 1-year anniversary of what the Iron Sentinels now simply called the lemonade stand incident. Mark Miller, looking 10 years younger, flipped burgers on the grill, a permanent smile on his face. His business was more successful than ever, and his garage had become a regular weekend hangout for the club. Leo, now 10, moved through the crowd of bikers with an easy confidence. He wore a small black denim vest over his t-shirt. On the back was the custom patch Wrench had given him. He wasn't a mascot, he was one of them. He knew every biker by their road name and could tell you the difference between a panhead and a shovelhead engine. Wrench sat at a picnic table, watching the scene with a quiet sense of satisfaction. The story had become a legend within the club, a lesson told to new prospects. It was a reminder that their strength wasn't in their numbers or their reputation, but in their willingness to stand for those who couldn't stand for themselves. Leo came over and sat beside him, holding 2 bottles of soda. He handed one to Wrench. "Thanks, Wrench. For everything." Wrench took the soda. "Thank you, Leo. You reminded all of us what we're supposed to be about." Leo held up the challenge coin, which he now wore on a chain around his neck. He'd polished it so many times it gleamed in the fading light. He said he'd never take it off. "My dad says you guys are our guardian angels," Leo said. Wrench chuckled, a low rumble in his chest. "Nah. Angels have wings. We just have bikes. But we get there." He looked at the boy, at the garage saved, the family secure, the brotherhood strengthened. It all started because one man chose to stop and listen to a child at a lemonade stand. It was proof that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply believe. And for the Iron Sentinels, that was a lesson worth writing for.